From Howard University to the White House, two entrepreneurs on a journey to take solar power to the people. It's all part of a clean energy revolution, and Washington Full Circle starts right now. Wind and solar power, LED lighting, and electric vehicles. It was all once a dream. Now it's a revolution. And perhaps no one understands that more than two college friends who created Volt Energy, a firm that's steadily rising in today's green economy. Welcome to Washington Full Circle. I'm Furman Patterson, and with me today are Gilbert Campbell and Antonio Francis, founders and co-managing partners of Volt Energy. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us. It's our pleasure.
Now, Washington Full Circle is all about entrepreneurs, and you two have shined brightly for us. First, I hate to use metaphors and euphemisms, but when was the seed first planted to start this green energy? I'll start with you, Gilbert.
Sure. I actually owe it to Antonio. In 2008, I was doing some work. We always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and Antonio had a cousin that was very high up at a company that makes wind turbines. So he asked us, my background working at Accenture was in business development and sales, and Antonio has a background in biotech and sales as well. So he said, can you guys help us out in alternative energy and using your business development background? We said, we don't know anything about green energy, but found out it was very lucrative, and just understanding more about the technology and the impact on the environment. We went to every conference we could go to here in DC, New Jersey, out west, and we were very blessed to meet a lot of key people in the industry, so that really piqued our interest. And then at that time in 2008 was the economic meltdown, and so we really saw an opportunity where if you look outside of payroll, electricity cost, utility cost is usually the second biggest line item for most companies and organizations. So we said, you know what, we can do a social good, but also at the same time help companies and organizations save on the bottom line.
Right.
So that really kind of kickstarted our passion to start the company, and we fully launched in 2009.
And so the light bulb for energy, Volt Energy went off, and you started saying, oh, we can do some big things with this.
Right. And we were very excited with solar because the barrier of entry was very low. With wind and other energy sources, it's, you have to be extremely well capitalized in order to have long lead cycles, but we were able to get in right away and start making a difference. Our first projects were in the North Carolina region, just because solar dealt with a lot of federal and state incentives, and we thought that North Carolina was positioned well at the time. So we started doing things with Wake Forest, with Fort Bragg, community development centers, and it was pretty amazing to see something from start to completion.
Right. So in DC, you've done some amazing things here. I know even the Wilson Building in downtown Washington, you've installed solar panels there. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. That just recently finished that project, and I think Mayor Bowser recently did a tour of it, so we were excited to work on that project and follow her lead in what good work that the city is doing with alternative energy.
Right.
One of the things that we saw with Washington is that the incentives were very good, and I tip my hat off to the city for really putting an emphasis on renewable energy. Being a Washingtonian, initially, as I mentioned, we were traveling to North Carolina, so once we saw the incentives were doing well at home, we said, hey, it's time to move our operations here, and it's probably one of the best things we've done. Since then, we've done stuff like the Wilson Building, charter school here in town, as well as Florida Avenue Baptist Church. And it was just good to be back home and doing what we love.
Yeah, now about KIPP School, that was very important because it involved a public school. Well, tell us about how do you get that contract with them?
Sure. Well, for us, it's always been we're big proponents of STEM education. So we've, as Antonio mentioned, worked with Wake Forest University, North Carolina A&T, Winston-Salem State, so Howard University. So we've always had a foot in the community from an education standpoint. So KIPP reached out to us about looking at the feasibility of solar probably 6 months before we even got into contractual negotiations. And then I think, they were forward thinking enough to say, you know what, it makes sense for us to do solar, and then also capitalize on the education component that the students will see coming to school every day. And solar is now the new norm, which is great to see.
Right. And also there was a first in D.C., the church, the Florida Avenue Baptist Church. So quickly tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was exciting for us as well, because traditionally a lot of companies were focused mostly on the private sector. But again, being in the community, we thought, why not try to do something at a place of worship? And we tip our hat off to Dr. Trent, who is a pastor of Florida Avenue Baptist Church, because he got it right away. And he said, guys, how do we go about doing this? So it was a little bit out of a norm the way we structured the deal at the time. Now, several companies have done the same, but a lot of the members of the church came together and actually invested in it, because some of the tax incentives wouldn't be realized by the church since they're a nonprofit status. But
Right.
It really gave the church something to highlight. It was the first in town, and we were excited to be a part of it.
Now, did you have any idea that this would take off both in D.C. and just around the country when you started this thing?
We did. I mean, we're both. I guess
The time was
part
right.
of being entrepreneurs, you got to think and dream big. But we're very fortunate that we've been able to expand from North Carolina to D.C. We're doing projects in California now, Colorado, some stuff in New Jersey. So we've been very fortunate to be able to grow in different states.
Before we take a break, tell us quickly just what your company offers, just in a nutshell.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, we're almost like localized energy. We offer mostly solar energy. We've done some storage as well. But the idea is that we hopefully could produce on-site energy that's reliable and cheaper than a utility company.
Terrific. Well, we got lots more to talk about. Stay put. Don't go away. More on the clean and green mission of Volt Energy when Washington Full Circle returns. Welcome back to Washington Full Circle. With us today, the founders of Volt Energy, one of the nation's largest minority-owned solar energy development firms. Now, you guys have kicked this thing all the way to the White House. So tell us about this White House visit and how did that come about, Antonio?
Sure. So it was a very interesting visit, and I think at a critical time in our business where we were actually gaining momentum. So we really don't know how we were invited, but we received a call and Gilbert said, Antonio, would you like to go to the White House tomorrow? So I was telling him, sure, but to see it happen that quickly and then be a part of, meeting the president at a critical time,
Yeah.
I think in our country's history was very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that photo of you guys behind the president there, looking like fresh business owners.
Right. So we actually had met him a little bit earlier. He was giving a speech at Georgetown, and we were fortunate enough to kind of same thing, just be at the right place at the right time. So upon meeting him the second time, he was like, "Nice to meet you." And I was like, "Nice to meet you again." He kind of looked like, but it was a very, very nice experience.
And I understand you got a signature from the president.
Yeah, that was actually at the Georgetown talk that we went to. He signed it for us, the Black Enterprise article,
Right.
which was pretty cool. But his administration overall has been extremely supportive for companies like us in the solar industry, but also minority businesses. At that same talk at Georgetown, the former EPA administrator, Lisa Jackson, we told her about the project. We were just getting ready to finish up at Florida Avenue Baptist Church. We said, we'd love if you could come by and give some remarks. And she said, you know what? I'll be the keynote speaker. So just, that kind of outreach from past and current administration has been great.
Right. So looking ahead, you guys have big plans for the company. You want it to be worldwide. Tell us about some of your ambitions.
Yeah, so one of my ambitions, and kind of going back to how Volt Energy was started, my first cousin is actually from a small island, Dominica, my dad as well. So he actually grew up, believe it or not, without electricity because he was on the outskirts. So they would use a lot of diesel, a lot of kerosene and stuff to just basic electrification needs. So
Right.
one of the things is we started to gain traction in the U.S. and we started looking at our 5, 10, 15, 20-year vision for the company. We said, you know what? We like creating alternative energy here, but we really, our passion is to hopefully find opportunities internationally where we could actually create electricity for people who may right now be in the dark. So very early on in the start of our company, I had a chance to go to South Africa just for pleasure, World Cup. And I saw a couple
Just for
things,
pleasure.
you know, just being kind of an entrepreneur, opportunities, and kind of reading, you know, the local papers, even though they were big on coal, they had some renewable energy expectations and ambitions. So 2 or 3 weeks after, I said, Gilbert, I have a feeling, let's get back to South Africa. So we went back and kind of got a taste of what the environment was like. And I think there's going to be a lot of international opportunities in the years to come.
I'm sure. I'm
Yes.
sure. Now, just for folks that have not taken that step and installed solar panels in their home and residentials, give us an idea just what solar panels can do for a home's energy costs.
Sure. There's a lot of new financing mechanisms that makes it easy for homeowners that don't want to spend all the money up front. But traditionally, you can see anywhere from a payback period of 5 years. And the beautiful thing of that is the solar systems last 25 to 30 years. So after 5 years, you're producing free electricity for 20 to 25 years. So it's an excellent investment due to some federal tax credits, which thankfully was just extended additional 5 years as part of the new tax budget package that was passed in December. So the solar industry is here for a while to stay. But for homeowners or business owners in DC or in the Maryland area, this is a perfect area for solar because a lot of the local incentives makes it the payback period pretty quick.
Now, one thing I didn't understand is storage and reselling of energy. Can you explain that? Am I getting that correct? In
Sure,
talking
yeah.
about
So there's a lot of different ways, and it all depends on the local laws. So, you know, state by state regulated. So in certain states, you're able to sell the energy back. So it's kind of like, I guess a glass of water would be a good example. If your cup's too full, you're able to pour it back into the pond, and then if you need it, you pour it back the other way. So typically solar, is during the day when you're maybe not at home. So there's instances where your meter could actually go back and you get paid for the energy. And you would think, why would the utility company want energy
Right.
from a homeowner? But believe it or not, they have the same balancing act. So they have to make sure that they have enough power on hand at certain times of the day and night. So it works well. And batteries, I think, is the next frontier. There are many companies out there that are working on storage, but similar to the cell phone back in the 80s, it's big, it's very expensive. Hopefully its price goes down, it gets a little bit better, a little more, I guess, visually appealing. I think we'll see it in the homes where you're actually going to be able to store cheaper electricity and then use it at peak times when your electricity may be a little bit more expensive. Something I wanted to kind of go back as you were asking Gilbert about putting solar on your home. The beauty right now, I think also, we would have to talk about the financial incentives in community. So you can pay for it directly and then kind of get the incentives, but solar is still pretty expensive. Companies such as ourselves and others that work more on the residential side actually have some mechanisms where you could actually get it for free, and then they kind of become your new utility company. So you would still pay your local utility for energy consumed from the grid, but whatever comes from solar, you would pay that company that put the solar panels on your home. So a lot of times, as long as you have some kind of credit worthiness, you can get solar pretty much for free up front, and then you would just pay it over time.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And that you mentioned something too, is that the costs are going down. Is that true for solar, for wind and the other things? Are prices going down for all?
Yeah, prices have dropped significantly. I mean, from 200% from when we first started. Just the price of turnkey installation has come down a lot, and even with batteries, it's starting to come down. And just quick story, we were just talking about batteries. We were at a conference in 2008, packed room for this entrepreneur was talking. We're like, what is he talking about? And it's batteries. And we were so shocked at the time because we didn't know the importance of storage, that out of all the different technologies, there were so many people there to see storage. But we just recently completed our first project with energy storage at the Cheesecake Factory's corporate headquarters in Calabasas, California.
Yeah.
They before had a 15-minute diesel generator to back up their critical IT infrastructure. We installed the solar on the rooftop, but part of the solar, we brought new battery solution, which takes them from 15 minutes to 3 hours.
Fantastic. Well, I want to hear more stories like that. Stay with us for more on the clean energy movement. Washington Full Circle returns in just a moment. Welcome back. We're talking with the entrepreneurs who created Volt Energy, a minority-owned company whose business strategy is to take solar power to the people. Now, I saw a photograph of you guys. I think it was an award from Amtrak and the Wizards. What was that all about?
Sure. That was Amtrak and the Washington Wizards have a partnership, and it's called the Pioneer Award. So every year they honor companies that make a positive impact in their local community. So we were very fortunate and honored to get that award from the Wizards and Amtrak. So in 2014, during one of the Wizards games, we were honored at halftime.
Wow. You guys are just getting awards and recognition all over. I wanted to know about the response you've been getting from the community, and I know you guys are really interested in teaching minorities and students about the energy, renewable energy. But what kind of feedback do you get from day to day?
So it's been pretty positive. I think a lot of people are excited to see young entrepreneurs in this space, and I think and encourage many other who are out there and aspiring entrepreneurs to really look at energy. It doesn't have to be solar energy, but there's just so much opportunities. It's like once you get into the world of energy, like you start to see that there's going to be a lot of innovation in our lifetime, and onwards. So I think there's pretty positive response, because a lot of times people look at their energy bill, they go straight to the bottom line, and no one really likes the utility company, not because they're doing a good or a bad job, but just because that's how energy is typically looked at.
Yeah.
But the response and options and like kind of being a little bit more educated about it has been very, very good.
Okay, so I hear this expression, green collar jobs, the green collar economy. What are the opportunities out there for people who want to get, entrepreneurs who want to get into this line of business?
Sure. I'll start kind of from like where we sit on the financing side and development side, and kind of explain how it trickles down. So just to give, I'm a numbers person. So according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, for example, in 2015, worldwide $270 billion was spent in alternative energy. So solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and other forms. And then if you look at some projections from going to 2040, currently 2/3 of our energy generation comes from fossil fuels. By 2040, it's predicted that 2/3 will come from renewable sources. So as you can see, and they equated that to $12.3 trillion by 2040. So just think about how much wealth will be created between now and that time period. So from a wealth creation standpoint, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And then the beauty of it is, what we do is we finance solar projects, and we control kind of like all the way down the supply chain. So we choose which installer builds it, who maintains the project, which again, these contracts and these solar systems last for 20 years. So a company can maintain that for 20 years. So jobs-wise, and the solar industry, specifically, since 2006, 150,000 jobs have been created. So there's a ton of jobs. Like any other industry, you have from a secretary to social media to finance to legals, just like any other industry. But it's it's a growing industry, and it's here to stay. So.
Right. Now I know in the city, the district government is doing green energy type of investments in its public buildings, and the U.S. is doing a lot. But what's happening abroad? What are you seeing other countries doing? Are they keeping up with us? Are they ahead of us?
Right. So if you look like Spain and others in Europe, there are certain countries that are a lot ahead of us. But I think there's still a lot of countries that are actually looking to build capacity. One of the areas of focus for Volt that we started looking at is some of the Central American policy that's starting to change. And I think they don't have maybe the exact incentives that the U.S. has, but what they do have are very high electric rates. Same thing with the Caribbean. You have very small islands that are importing energy that would like to create their own energy. So I think as things start to unfold, price continues to drop. And the reason price is dropping is like anything else. The more demand there is for anything, the more you could kind of open up production, and then hopefully eventually refine costs and bring it down.
Right.
So I think there'll be a lot of growth in the international market.
Yeah, you just touched on something too, and sometimes in vacationing, especially in the Caribbean, you'll rent a vacation house, and they say you pay for utilities, but it's outrageous the amount that they say is due because of high utility rates. Solar power can change that, right?
Yes, I want to give a quick story as well. My wife's actually from Jamaica, and they had a beautiful house in Port Antonio, and every time we're down there, they're like, don't turn on the AC, because if you do, they're going to bill you for the whole year. So prior to getting into energy, I never understood, like, is this a racket or what's going on? But kind of going back to that balance that I mentioned as far as utility companies having to keep a certain amount of energy balance and online. When you turn on all those AC units at the peak demand, you're causing them to possibly look to another power plant to bring energy on, which costs them a lot of money to do. So because of that demand, they had to pass that on to the customer.
Right.
And then not knowing will that demand be needed again, they kind of penalize you for what's called like ratchet rate.
Yeah.
Again, there's tons of sun in the Caribbean. So you see places that people want to adopt this energy and just say, hey, look, if I could create my own energy, hopefully I could control my costs a little bit more.
Certainly.
And if you follow where the capital is being spent, as I mentioned earlier, last year, $270 billion was spent worldwide. $113 billion was spent in developing nations. So we're seeing more and more, countries making the move towards alternative energy. As Antonio mentioned before, many countries may not even have, electricity in certain parts of their country.
Right. And finally, before we go, you deal a lot with students through the STEM program. What do you want these aspiring kids to know about this industry before we go?
Sure. Just a tremendous amount of opportunity. I mean, kids get it. Like when we talk to kids, they understand technology very well, and you explain to them solar is very easy to understand. It's plug and play. So really just to see that there's a wealth creation, entrepreneurship opportunity, but of those who want to go the traditional career route, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity, whether it's energy storage we talked about, electric vehicles, solar, wind. So yeah, it's kind of the wave of the future, and it's a global opportunity. So when we talk to kids, we love doing it. It's one of our passions, and we can see it that they love the industry.
Yeah, the sky's the limit, so to speak.
Absolutely.
There's another one of my euphemisms. Thanks to both of you for being here. Come back sometime.
All right,
Okay,
thank you
great.
for hosting
Thanks
us.
for having us.
That's it for Washington Full Circle. Thanks to our guests, and thanks to you for watching. We'll see you again next time.